Hi everybody, welcome back. Tony again here with Shinsho Yoga, and welcome to part 3 of becoming a yoga teacher, and this one is going to be on post-graduation. So prior two videos, the first one on talking about before you go into teacher training, deepening your practice and things you should know. Second one being on yoga teacher training itself, some of the things you can expect. And now I want to talk about what to expect after you graduate. Right? So, your first choices are, do you decide to go and teach yoga, or do you just keep that as training for yourself? Either or is fine. You do not have to become a yoga teacher once you've graduated yoga teacher training. Don't think there's a shame in that. Again, I originally never chose, well, I guess the universe chose for me, but I did not go in looking to deepen looking to become a yoga teacher. I wanted to deepen my yoga practice. I wanted to understand how yoga worked. That's how my brain works. I am not a math person, as I like to call it. I don't need to know 2 plus 2 is 4, 4 plus 4 is 8, 8 plus 8 is 16. I need to know why 2 plus 2 is 4, and I'll figure the rest out myself. That's how my mind works. So I wanted to understand why we did the postures that we did. But again, going through the process and encouragement from my teacher and my peers in my class, and a career change because I was laid off from the business I was in, I became a yoga teacher. But that wasn't my goal. My goal was just to deepen my practice. And no matter what goal you go in for, your effort should remain the same. Whether you're going to become a teacher or going on just to deepen your practice, you should have the same effort and embrace it the same way. Right? So if you've graduated and you just want to continue to practice and study yoga, that's fine. You don't have to teach. But if you do decide to become a teacher, how do you find a place to teach? Well, the general way you'll find that initially is wherever you're studying, oftentimes the teachers there will bring those that they've trained on into the studio, at least as subs, right? So you start generally as a sub. Right? A lot of times some places will offer what they call community classes, and that's where it's a donation-based class. It's rotating teachers. They offer it once a week, maybe a Sunday afternoon or something like that, and that's where they'll put in their yoga teacher trainees, the ones that have graduated. That's where you first start getting your experience, is generally in either the studio you're trained at, or even at, maybe you trained at another studio because you're the one you regularly go to doesn't offer training. You go back there and say to your teacher, hey, I graduated training. Could I, do a community class here, a donation-based class? Could I be on the sub list? That's generally where you're going to start. You're going to start either in a donation, community-based class, as they would call it, or as a sub. And I would embrace that because you need to cut your teeth. When you come out of teacher training, as I had said in the prior video, you're kind of like a deer in headlights. And you're not going to really know what to do at first. And that's not going to come overnight. You just got to do it over and 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 slowly chip away. It's like water running over a rock. Right? The first time that water runs over the rock, it's not going to do anything. But you do thousands of gallons of water every day over a year, and it's going to smooth that rock out. It's going to grind the edges from your mind. Right? So you're going to need to embrace that that teaching, and do as much as you can. For the first year that I did after training, I subbed for my teacher all the time. I can't necessarily say that was business-wise the smartest thing to do. And in the next video, I'll talk about the yoga business, which is a whole nother animal in itself. But I wanted to just do as much as I could to cut my teeth. So whenever my teacher called me to sub, I would get texts sometimes at 6 a.m. Hey, man, can't make it to class today. Can you cover for me? And I'd be up, ready to go. Again, business-wise, I'm not necessarily, I'll talk about that in the next video, whether that's a good idea or not, but I did it to learn. So sometimes I was teaching 10 classes a week because everybody that would call out, so-and-so got tickets to go see, Billy Joel. So-and-so is not feeling well tonight. So-and-so had to pick up her kids. So-and-so is on vacation, and I just covered all the classes. Take as many classes as you can in the beginning because you need as much practice as you can. It's going to be hard, though, finding a regular job at a regular studio initially coming out of yoga teacher training because you don't have the experience and you don't have a following, right? That's the thing they're going to look for too. And that's, again, something I'll talk about in the next video. I kind of want to separate how to get yourself going and what to be in store for in the business, because the business, again, is an animal in itself. So coming out of the teacher training, you're going to have to take at first what you can get. Some of the places you might be able to find to go teach are gyms, right? Gyms, in my opinion, are not ideal to teach at. It's not conducive to a mindful environment. The people that are coming there are generally are generally yoga dedicated people. They view it just as an exercise, and they're not really great payers when it comes to yoga practice. But you got to cut your teeth. So if it means going into a gym and doing teaching there, take the gig. Cut your teeth. Get those notches on your belt. Get those hours underneath so you have experience and you've dealt with a diverse group of people. Some things you can do is sometimes community centers, much as I said community class, community centers will want someone to come teach yoga for a donation, right? I again, without getting into business right away, don't do it for free. Get paid for what you do, even if it's only a small amount. But get paid for what you do. This is an energy exchange. People will appreciate it as much as that you value it. And if you give it away for free, they're not going to value it, and you'll put yourself in a bad position down the road. I understand that maybe you've graduated training and this is not what you're making as your living, which I get, but you still need to be valued for your time. So even if it's a donation-based class, right, at some community center, you can do that. During summer or spring warm months, a lot of times you can do outside yoga at places. Parks will want to offer yoga, so you could contact the park system and do that. One of my first gigs was teaching at a college, right, to adult education. I taught at a local community college for 4 years. And that was an experience because that really, I did a beginner's class, and I took people from who'd never taken yoga up to doing full flows in 14 weeks. And then I did an advanced class after that. I can't say the experience with the college and the management of the college was really that good, but as a teacher, it was an invaluable experience, and it taught me a lot. Because I really had to break down teaching beginners. I can't tell you how important it is to teach beginners. You might want to go in and be like, well, I want to teach advanced students. I want to show people how to do handstands and all that. Teach somebody who has no idea how to do child's pose, or who has tight hips, who can't sit all the way back and do child's pose, how to get into child's pose and how to modify with blocks and blankets. That's going to teach you the most, right? Someone who's overweight and out of shape and can't do a flow, right? Can't do chaturanga at all, right? An up dog, down dog, it's killing them. Getting them to modify knees, chest, chin, right? Getting to you really understand their body and how to do it. That is going to teach you the most. So put away the thoughts of advanced people and find those beginners and teach them. That's going to teach you the most as a teacher. Is the people who have no idea how to do yoga. It'll give you real understanding of people's bodies and the struggles that they have. Teaching beginners is going to teach you the most about teaching. It's going to teach you the most about other people's bodies and the struggles they have. And it's also going to teach you a lot about your own practice and what you do. Because you're going to see the practice through your lens all the time, unless you work with people like this. So getting in with beginners, getting in with people who've never done it before, and showing them how to modify, showing them how to learn their body and do this is going to be invaluable in your growth as a teacher. Now, with that, I would like to talk about making adjustments. So some teachers are big adjusters. I am not. Unless you are a private student of mine. And even with the privates, I only do it sparingly. I very rarely adjust students. And I would encourage you the same. I'm going to tell you why. One, let's just talk about in this day and age. Putting your hands on people without their warrant for it can be misinterpreted, right? I'm a male teacher. Yoga is primarily a female population. I'm very mindful of touching my students. Again, if you're a private student, that's a whole other thing because you've come for that type of lesson where you want that hands-on. If you are a student in a class, I'm going to be very mindful of putting my hands on you because unless I know you well, I don't know how you're going to react and I don't know how you're going to view it. And that could go wrong for you. So, one, because of the world that we're in, putting your hands on students without their okay is, without them saying something about it, can be tricky. Two, you can be perceived as playing favorites with students. And this is a big one. Once you're perceived as playing favorites, you're never going to lose that. You can't get rid of that. So you have to make sure it's never established. And when it comes to adjusting students, there's a window of opportunity and adjustment, right? The person who is floundering and doesn't know any yoga, you're not going to adjust them because you'll spend the whole class adjusting them. You'll have to break the whole flow. They're just going to have to tough their way out through it until they've reached a certain level that adjustments will warrant them, because adjusting them you'll spend the whole time on. They can't. They're going to have to cut their teeth on that. The people that are advanced in the practice, you're not really going to adjust them either because they pretty much know how to do it, or they've done it so much at this point where they are, you going in and adjusting them is just, they have their way. So what are you going to go in and tell them, don't do it that way, do it this way? Right? Some of these people, you know, when you come out of teacher training, you might have been practicing yoga for a couple of years and then took this 4-month course, and you're going to go in and tell somebody who's been doing yoga for 20 years how to do their practice. You have to be mindful of that. The person you're going to adjust, if anybody, is the mid-ground person, the person who's almost there, right? And just needs a little tweaking, right? Maybe in Warrior, they don't torque their hips and you need them just to torque it up, but everything else is good. Or they have a good posture, but they're always holding their shoulders up. Or maybe someone in Utkatasana who doesn't bring their feet together in chair, right? Always has them wide and you want to try to bring them together. But with that, I'm going to roll into my next one, which will be on knowing the person. But before you do that, because you can't adjust people without knowing their body. But that's the person you would adjust, right? It's that kind of middle ground person. The one who's brand new, you can't, because you'll screw up the whole flow of the class. You won't have time. You'll spend your whole class adjusting them. The person in advance, they've been doing it for 20 years and you're going to tell them what to do, right? It's that mid-ground person. And if you have a regular group of students in your class and that mid-ground person is there in all those classes and you're always adjusting them, guess what? The other students now think that person is your favorite. And a lot of rumors and things can fly. So I would, again, for that reason, also avoid adjusting students. The last bit why I would tell you to avoid adjusting students is what I had just mentioned, is you don't know where your student's body is that day. Again, unless they're a private student and you know and work with them and have conversations about where they are, going into them and aggressively adjusting them is not the thing to do. you could hurt them. A teacher one time, I hadn't been to practice in a couple months. Things had gotten off, and I jumped back into this a vigorous practice, and I was in camel posture, and I guess I really wasn't. I didn't have the openness, and he came and he stuck his foot in the middle of my back and grabbed my shoulders and pushed like this. It hurt like hell, and it didn't help me in the posture. I wasn't fully not open in the posture because I was slopping into it and being lazy. It's because I couldn't. That's not going to help your student. That's not going to open them up. Their body has to relax into it and open it. That's just going to hurt them. Another one, we were doing Gomukasana, but I was doing it on my back, so cow face pose. I have a lot of problems with cow face. And she came up and said, oh, we got to get your hips open. So she's pressing down on me, right? And she was a little woman, right? But she's putting all 100 pounds on me, pressing down, trying to get my hips open, and oh my God, it hurt. That's not how you don't adjust people aggressively. Anything you adjust is a light adjustment. Light, little things. My teacher would just come place his hands on your shoulders as a reminder to drop them down, right? And when you're torquing someone's hips in Warrior, it's just a light little touch, right? Light touches if you're going to adjust. But again, unless you know the student, know them well, know where their body is, best probably to not touch them. Be good at cueing. Cueing the steps, very important. The better you are at that, the less you'll have to worry about adjustments. But also, again, be cautious of being perceived as playing favorites, because these things happen in studios, right? People talk. And also, putting your hands on someone uninvited in this day and age can be misunderstood. So I would keep adjustments to a minimum. As for creating your flows, how are you going to do that? Well, if you don't have someone to practice with, do them yourself. Practice at home, right? There's a book I have of one of my teachers, friends, was a teacher said to me, called Yoga Sequencing, right? And I used that to help me create some flows, right? And I still would go to classes. I go to other teachers' classes and steal ideas, borrow ideas all the time. I've been to Pilates classes and borrowed ideas to be able to work into what I do. But it's important that you do the class so you know how it feels. You have to know how they feel. So when you're initially doing this, for the first year, I was doing tons of yoga on my porch, because whatever flow I was going to come up for that week, and that's how I do it. It's my flow for the week, what I'm going to focus on, right? And what you're focusing on really depends on you. I do choose one of three things. Either I'm focusing on flexibility that week, building strength for that week, or increasing circulation, right? So if it's increasing circulation, it's a vigorous flow, right? If it's strength building, we're going to focus on things like chaturanga or something like that, where we really got to press down and build up the body, or maybe handstands, a more advanced one. Or if we're flexibility, and often in yoga we're focusing on flexibility all the time, no matter what, I'll pick a body part and work on that. Sometimes I just do an overall flow, right? It depends on how you want to build the class. If you want to do what's called work towards a peak pose, right? Which is, you're working to come into handstand, so you're building the body up, building up the flow so that the person at the height of the class is available to come into handstand, right? Or whatever your peak pose is, or maybe you're doing an all over flow. There's lots of different ways to create them, but you really need to know how they feel. So for the first, I'm going to say at least this first 6 months, when you create a flow, do it yourself. See how it feels. And if it feels wrong, change it. Do something different, right? If you have to, write them down, but I wouldn't say, definitely don't, in class, left foot forward, right foot forward, forward fold, exhale. Inhale, rise up, exhale, forward fold, right? If you have to write it down as a note initially, I understand, but you got to be able to get it off like that. So practice at home. So as you do your flow at home, breathe and say it in your head. And with that, it comes back to the breath. As you're learning this, breathe, follow your breath, As your thoughts arise, acknowledge them, allow them to pass by, and return to the breath. So, that's my thoughts on that. Next video, I'll get into the business, which may take a little bit more. It's a little more complicated, but thanks again for watching. Namaste.